You're at your old trusty boat. You call mighty sparrow. I'm in the city of Mardi Gras.
Welcome to the Sailing into Oblivion podcast, where we sit down with everyday people who do extraordinary things. I'm your host, Jerome Rand. Welcome aboard the Sailing into Oblivion podcast. Coming to you from Michigan. Is that too corny to say welcome aboard instead of welcome to the show? I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe it's not. We'll have to just mull that one over. I want to have that kind of catchphrase beginning, I guess. But today, I am presenting you with my cousin Nick for a return to the podcast. He just went out on a 5-week living out of his truck sort of journey out west. And we talked a lot about not only kind of where he went and some of the places and some of the experience he's had, but I think the core of the conversation was really about getting out of your comfort zone and sort of shaking things up a bit. And, you know, that's definitely something he and I have talked about before. So it was kind of a fun subject to dive into. I obviously take myself out of my own comfort zone enough that my comfort zone becomes actually where I used to take myself out of it, if that makes any sense. You know, in the beginning, you get a little nerve-wrack going way offshore, and now way offshore is far more comfortable for me than being back on land. I feel fidgety and I feel kind of out of place, if you will. But I think a journey, the American road trip, if it's not too cliche, is something that's very, I want to say healing, but I want to say it's like a coming of age thing. I don't know. I mean, when I think about all the times I've crisscrossed this great nation of ours, it's astronomical. I did most of it back when I was in my late teens and early 20s. Lots of trips out to Oregon, lots of trips out to Montana, you know, the good like 2-3 day sort of road trip. And I had often pondered about what it would be like to go and do, you know, one of these trips where essentially you're taking weeks and weeks to go and do it. And obviously I've done it on foot, on the Appalachian Trail. I've done a lot of ocean stuff like that where you're fully committed to it. But a road trip where you're out to see some sights, find some new things, get into a little trouble. You never know. It can be a pretty crazy place. I think that's something that is warranted and easy enough. It's within everybody's reach to be able to hit the American road. There's just something about it. This country's so huge. It's so vast. It's so variant. You know, you go from the New England coast down to the Florida coast. You go over the Appalachians. You go into the Great Plains, the Badlands, the Rockies, the Pacific coast, the Western deserts, Southwest deserts, the lowlands, the low country. I mean, there really is a huge variance of beautiful, not only terrain, but towns, places, people. Sometimes I think people forget about just how remarkable a piece of land that we call home right now is. And it is. It's something that can teach us a lot and show us a lot of experiences. But I don't know. That's what we sort of get into. And it was really interesting to listen to how it sort of helped him and how it's a way, I think, for people to, I don't know, gives you a little bit of time to sort things out in your brain. It gives you some perspective. You know, when you're on the road, you're sort of in a different sort of mind sense. If you listen to any of the droning on that I did in that podcast where I was doing it from the road coming back from Cape Cod, you would know that, yeah, it's a great time to just ponder and think of things and sort through stuff. Obviously, the Appalachian Trail, you're in your head for 10, 12 hours a day, and then you're sitting at a campsite alone, continuing the feat of self-examination and things like that. And the ocean, I think, as well is like that. But when you find yourself in a place out in nature with a beautiful backdrop, you find those out west, lakes and mountains and all that stuff, and it's all yours. It's empty. It's absolutely isolating. I think that's a special place and time to find yourself in. No cell service, no distractions, just you, Mother Nature, and your thoughts, really. And sometimes it's kind of funny, and I find this when I'm out on the sea. You know, we talked a little bit about how the view out on the ocean really is dependent upon the sky more than anything. The waves will change. They'll get big, they'll get small, they'll go flat. But that view is very localized. But when you go out west, you see for sometimes what seems like hundreds of miles. I mean, you see these peaks that are so far away, and the sky seems so big, and the view is just, it's throwing a lot at you. And one of my favorite things to do out at sea is basically sit amidships when I'm not getting splashed by the waves, but we're sailing, and there's good wave action. And I can sit amidships and lean back and put my foot up on the old lifeline and just kick back. I have this one clip that I often look at from my early days of solo sailing, where I was just doing the training, going from place to place down in the Caribbean and essentially trying to learn the craft, if you will. And there were a lot of times when, I essentially would just sit in that position, and in this clip, I can hear some old Mighty Sparrow album that was on the old Bluetooth speaker, and I remember it. I remember that day. I remember that feeling. It brings me right back to it. It's so amazing how music can do that. But I see the scene, and I wish I would have had a better camera because it's a real shaky clip, or else I'd share it with everybody. But essentially, it's just the ocean waves floating in. And I guess the point I'm trying to make is that I would find that favorite little spot, and I'm nowhere near land. I've got days or whatever, weeks sometimes before I have any of the pressures of that sort of coming back. And essentially you find yourself in this very quieted place, and sometimes the thoughts seem to dissipate and disappear completely, whereas you're not on this sort of trip to sort things out. Your brain has just gone quiet, and you get to just sort of take it in, harking back to that childlike mental state that I find myself in when I go offshore, where everything slows down. Time seems to slow down. You can just watch the clouds, and you can be happy with that, and your brain isn't trying to run you straight off of a cliff like it seems to be sometimes in this world of absolute chaos and information flowing to everybody. I think our brains are just now starting to cope with it, if they even can, or maybe they're showing signs of absolute catastrophic collapse, as these generations of humans that have now had computers and screens and all that in their pockets for their whole lives get older and older. I guess we'll find out what really happens. But I don't know. I have to find my little escape out there. And Nick found his escape out on the open road on this 5-week trip. It was pretty darn cool. I saw it on his Instagram. I don't know if it's open to the public or anything like that. I'll put a link to it in the, well, I don't know. I guess, we'll have to figure that one out. We'll see. Not everybody wants to have their stuff thrown right out. But in any event, it was great to have Nick back on the show. Big thanks for spending a little bit of time sitting down and chatting with me. Hopefully you all enjoy this conversation about the road trip out west. Before I start the show, like I always say, if you want to help support this podcast, keep it ad-free, keep it going long into the future, and keep the guests coming, consider becoming part of the Patreon family. The link is in the description. Thank you all so much, those of you who have continued to support this podcast and the content that I'm trying desperately to create and keep going into the future. We do have 2 links, one for PayPal, one for Venmo, for anybody that wants to just throw a little donation towards the old fight to keep Mighty Sparrow alive and going back out to sea and all that sort of stuff. Need new sails, need a whole lot of stuff. And yeah, it takes quite a bit. It takes quite a bit of help. So those links are there for anybody that doesn't want to sign up for a subscription-based sort of thing, but it's much appreciated. We get donations every now and again, and it is a pretty good feeling. So I appreciate those who have done it in the past. We've still got the merch line out there and all that sort of stuff. Link in the description as well. And if you just want to reach out to the show, sailingintooblivion.com. Follow the podcast button and contact the show. Those go directly to me. Other than that, we're still working on a few other projects I don't want to talk too much about, but hopefully they will be available in the coming months. Some new cool stuff to get, and that's pretty much it. So hopefully you enjoyed the show and enjoy the conversation with Nick about the open road. Thanks for listening. And we're live. Whoa, there we go. Welcome back to the show.
Good morning.
Cousin Nick. Fine, sir. Squire of David.
Thank
no,
you
it's
for
not.
having me.
You want to move that mic a little closer? Give me a little
Yeah.
mic check.
Check 1, 2.
There we go.
that
All right.
good?
The secret is to get comfortable, then
Bring it to you.
bring it to you.
Oh, God.
No, you're all right. It has a little play in it. You can. There's a little knob on the
Yeah, I see that.
on the heel of that thing if you want. But yeah, I thank you. These things. I initially started out with pretty basic mics and everything.
Yeah.
And then,
I think I remember seeing you first set up.
Yeah. Because we did the one about New Zealand and
We
stuff.
did, but I
Yeah.
thought we had these. I don't know. I just remember at one point in time you showed me something and it was very small and basic.
And plugged into the computer.
Yeah.
And there was a point where, because all that stuff is USB ports and all that, and eventually it just it kept crashing the program.
Yeah.
And you'd be sitting here trying to do a podcast, you'd be getting into like an in-depth thing and be like, yeah, when my uncle passed away, and then I'd be like, oh wait, hold on, we gotta
Hit pause.
It's like, oh no.
Just lost the story.
Shoot. But yeah, so no, and honestly, all this stuff comes from the listeners,
Oh, cool.
like the supporters with
Yeah.
Patreon stuff and everything. Like this little Zoom not
Device.
microphone, but I guess it is a microphone because it has this is a mic under here, so you can just take this unit
Oh, yeah. And just
instead
like
of these. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's how I did all the recordings on this last boat because I didn't want to take all this stuff with me.
Oh, cool.
The sound quality's not
As good.
super good. But like if you ever listen to Radio Lab or something like that, when they're in the field,
That's what they're using.
that's what they're using, and it does a really good job. It's pretty cool, man.
That's perfect.
For a Thanksgiving morning podcast, question on that note: do you eat anything leading up to Thanksgiving dinner, or
Oh.
do you abstain?
I kind of abstain,
then
I think. I mean, let's say I wake up at family's house or something like that, and they're making some breakfast. I'll get into that for sure. But
Right,
then I don't
right.
think we're really eating lunch. Maybe snacking a little bit.
Well, there's football on too, right?
Yeah. Which I've never.
Never really gotten into it too bad, yeah.
I'm a big fan of the college. The coming weekend, but. Yeah, don't really get into that, but snacking a little bit for sure. But usually it's at least 2 servings for Thanksgiving. So, and I know that going into it. So
Yeah, it's sort of like let's do this,
yeah,
dude. You think that's snow out on the
Well, I
over
was
the
just
lake, or is that fog?
I think it's fog. I think the rain. There's a little bit of like rainy mist in the air.
Yeah, but do you think it's cold? It's not cold enough to freeze yet, huh?
Well, I don't know. It could
Or
be
it's
snow.
just
I don't think
snow,
it's
yeah.
supposed to snow. I think later this week it might. That's what I.
The brisk chill of a northern Michigan morning.
Yeah. I mean, some mornings. What was that? A couple of years ago, we woke up and there was we got 3 feet of snow or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know. It's been an odd bunch of winters up here. I mean, I haven't been up here for the whole winter, but I don't know. I seem to remember having to plow the driveway a lot in the past and not so much in the last 3 years.
It seems to me, having lived up here now for a few years, that we'll get these big snowstorms
And then it just
dies out.
Yeah.
And then in February, we'll get snow. It'll rain. It'll freeze.
yeah,
It'll snow
yeah.
again.
Oh god.
And that's happened like the past couple Februaries. Like just for 2 days, it's just terrible.
Yeah.
I don't think that it's not as big of a winter as, I don't know. Although I said that, I think the other year, and somebody was like, no, we still hit the same record we did like the year before.
Like temperature-wise and snowfall-wise?
And snowfall-wise,
Yeah.
but it's more of like big snowstorms instead of like spread out.
Well, I think we're in an El Nino year now after being in La Nina for a decade or something or more.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know it's all just sea surface temperatures and stuff like that, mostly in the Pacific that are the driving force of that, but it changes absolutely everything around the globe as far as where they're getting rain, where they're getting heat, and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. Like we often talk about the Gulf Stream and how insane its presence is felt throughout pretty much the whole northern hemisphere, really. I mean, well, we were looking at that last night.
We were, yeah. And I was going to say, it's huge.
Huge. I mean, and it's so hot. Like when you go out there and you get into it on a boat, you can be up in, north of it, and it's like 40 degrees out, and you can just suddenly cross a line in the water.
And you feel it.
And now it's 75.
Wow.
And you'll get these wafts of cold air that still hit you every once in a while.
Yeah.
But then if you feel the water, it's super warm. Takes on a totally different color, all this sort of stuff. And then once you get past it,
it shifts back.
It goes, it's not as warm, but you've crossed the barrier. So when we do our trips down to the Caribbean and stuff, the first few days out from, say, Charleston or something might be cold, really cold, especially if you have a north wind. But as soon as you cross that stream, it's like, well, we're in the Caribbean kind of now for the whole rest of the way down. And I don't know, it was always a pretty funny thing because you had to bring all the cold weather gear. But you're only going to use it for like 2 days, and then it's like, woo.
But when you need it.
Oh my God, dude, this last trip.
Freezing.
So we left the Gulf. We had to cross the Gulf of Maine and there's a canal, a man-made canal that cuts across Cape Cod. And essentially it was like 24 hours to get down there, and we just motored. No wind to speak of, but it snowed. Like it was like 30 degrees, and you're sitting in the cockpit, and it's just, I was wearing every stitch of clothes I had, 2 pairs of socks, hat, baklava, everything.
And you don't have any type of there's not like little portable heater or anything.
Not with this boat. Once you're up, you're behind like the Dodger, so it cuts any induced wind that you're seeing. But down below, I think there must have been a heater on this boat, but we had the engine going, so that sort of gives you a little residual down below.
Yep.
But I mean, we had those hand warmers. Like I had to have them in my hand. I kept like pressing them up against my boot.
Dude, I was glad that I took hand warmers on this last trip because and toe warmers.
Oh,
I definitely
you had
used
them?
them.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
There were a few nights.
You were, you were up at altitude.
Yeah, that was the thing. Because it was funny. I was looking at a lot of the temps, and when I knew I was going to get to Stanley, I looked at it before I even had gotten into Idaho, and that was the one spot. It was like 70 around certain areas and like 60s and stuff like that, and then there was like 30 and 40.
Really?
Yeah, and so I knew the longer I stayed out, and once I got there, it was going to be
because it is. Yeah, I mean, it was the fall, and I guess just for the listeners' sake, do you want to do a quick synopsis of the actual trip, where you went and how long you went?
Yeah, so I did basically a big road trip out west.
Road tripping,
and
love it.
It ended up being around 5 weeks. I left from Michigan, northern Michigan, and I went up through the UP. We did a night up there, and then crossed over. We basically were trying to get to Montana as quickly as we could. And I say we. My brother went with me for the first 5 days.
Yeah,
to basically get me to Montana.
Your little training wheels.
Yeah, exactly. It's like,
hey,
will you help me?
Well, because some of this trip, some of it's kind of like freaking, the proverbial soul searching,
absolutely
kind of thing. Which I mean, the Great American Road Trip is really, there's something about that. I mean, it's not just in the movies that
no, it's real.
People come of age on the road.
You really do. And I had never done anything like that. I think it was a really cool opportunity for him to go with me because we'd never done anything like that together. Just like him and I, like even just a trip. So there was a lot of good things about that. But basically, we got into North Dakota, and we stayed a night there. Then we pushed into Montana, and that's where the good stuff, that's where the fun started to happen. But essentially, I went from Montana into Idaho, northern Idaho, then over to Washington, and down to Oregon, back into Idaho, over to a little bit into Utah, up into Wyoming, like Jackson Hole area, into the Badlands, and then came back into the Midwest. And I stayed south this time, so I went, around like Chicago.
Oh, okay, right.
I had some like meetings in Grand Rapids on the way home, and then back up.
Yeah. Dude, the road, man, it's I don't know, there's something, it's like it's funny because I didn't even think about this, but yeah, I mean, I've been out there doing obviously the speaking stuff and just primarily East Coast, but still you're seeing new sites, new towns, new places all the time. But you had the full on rig with that truck.
Yeah.
And that was like full sleeper, like
full. Yeah. So basically, when I essentially like offloaded everything, right? Went out, not that I advise buying a new truck, but there's something fun about it. But bought this truck and knew.
And what kind is it?
It's a Toyota Tundra. Yeah. And so it's a beast. It's big.
And it's made, I mean, that's an actual truck that can handle some dirt paths.
Yeah. And I didn't really, I think some of that inspiration to get the truck originally just came from, I've driven Jeeps all my life, and mine was just, it was time to move on from it.
Right.
And
tired old fella.
So I started looking into trucks just from the utility standpoint of like, I've got a lot of gear. We're hauling boats in the summer and stuff like that. And, but I've always been an SUV guy, but I don't know. I started driving them around or test driving them, and I was like, well, these things are pretty bad.
It's kind of nice. Yeah, dude.
Yeah,
they're nice, man.
So, but I knew this thing. Yeah, I wanted to. And then once this trip idea kind of started, coming together, I was like, yeah, this truck would be great for that. I think a lot of people like, I was basically doing dispersed camping.
Yeah.
But they also call it like overlanding. I mean, I don't really know if I was overlanding in a sense. Boondocking.
Yeah.
I was definitely not like rock crawling or anything like that. But
right.
You need a way different truck for that. But,
yeah.
But yeah, so I built this thing out where basically had this bed rack that held all the storage, and it held like a mini shower and extra water and
oh wow,
all
like
this
mini
gear.
shower. That's crazy.
Yeah. And then I essentially went out and I got this rooftop tent. And mine was comfortable. Like it was essentially a queen width, king length. Like you could open the whole thing up for a 360-degree view.
Oh wow.
It had every storage compartment you think
of.
of.
And that sits, because it sits on top. Because I like looking at the truck from here.
Yeah,
that would have sat on the top of the cab and then gone back over some support.
So basically, the rack sits on your bed, right, and then this sits right on top of it. So it does creep a little bit over your roof line, and extends back a little bit. I mean, I got one of the biggest rooftop.
Well, man of your stature. I mean, you're what,
6'2".
6'2".
Yeah.
Oh, you're shrinking.
I
You
know
used
I
to
am.
be 6'3".
Welcome
to middle age, pal.
It starts early. But yeah, I wanted to. I did a ton of research. Actually, I leaned into my brother-in-law. He's the one who. He's got an older Toyota Tundra, and this thing's just. I mean. He's a beast. He's got huge tires on it and lift, but he had a rack
Michigan
and
thing. Yeah,
he had a big rooftop tent, and that helped kind of inspire like the initial like setup of the rig and like what I wanted to get into. So I leaned to him for like a lot of questions about like the gear and like what they used and what he liked and disliked and some of the companies to look into. I mean, the industry's huge, and I never really know anything about it.
With all the van life stuff and all that culture almost, you could call it.
Absolutely.
There's definitely the opportunity to. But I think with the truck though, it's a little different. It seems, I don't know. Seemed when I saw pictures on Instagram, I thought more of like safari action.
Yeah. It's a little more
the way
rugged.
it's set up, yeah.
I mean, I thought about vans at one point, but I knew that I also wanted a daily driver, basically, and something that I could use to haul some of the gear once, in the summer, like move a boat here and there, stuff like that. So that's why I went the truck route. But at the same time, I knew that if I'm going to do this, I want to be comfortable. I knew I was going to be out there for several weeks at least.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, it was 5.5 weeks.
it was like 5 weeks.
5 weeks.
Yeah.
That's a long time to be
It
like living out of a vehicle.
Yeah. Well, and when I finally built the rig out, and it was essentially, I had all the gear, I slept in the tent for more than 2 months.
Oh, wow.
Because-
Every night.
Yeah, every night. Because when I got it and I finally set it up, I was like, well, I better get used to this thing. So for like a few weeks leading up, I slept in it. And then when I basically came back and, had to come back to reality, I also didn't have a place lined up just yet. So
Yeah, because you literally you cashed it in. You sold the house, sold everything.
Yeah, sold the
And it
house,
was
sold
like,
the car, sold furniture. Like I definitely had some things I threw in to storage, but
Yeah.
I kind of offloaded everything.
Just freaking went for it, dude.
Yeah.
Congrats, man.
So-
it's a scary feeling though, isn't it?
It
Where
was
you're,
I was
signing things away.
I was definitely scared of it. I mean, there was a point in time where I was just like, I'm getting rid of all of it. You get into that mindset.
Yeah.
But it was interesting on the trip. I think it was like I was like 3.5 weeks in, and I recall sitting at this spot that I had found, and I ended up staying there for a couple days because it was one of those like really desolate spots, and you didn't have any service or anything like that. But I was messing around with the drone, and I took this photo, and it was me just sitting. I kind of set up camp, but that's pretty easy. Like that was the nice thing about this setup was like literally you could find your spot, park, you pop your tent in less than a minute. Like your bed and everything's set. I would open this awning, pop my chair out, my little like portable fire pit, and like literally within 5 minutes, like I'm chilling.
Yeah. You got your little homestead.
Yeah, you're ready to go and hang out. And I took this photo and I was sitting there and I recall like just flipping through that night and it came up and I was just like, wow, a month ago I had this big home and all this land and all these things and toys and, all this stuff. And now I'm sitting here and I'm absolutely perfectly content and I'm living out basically the back of this truck.
Yeah.
And it's just everything's so like simple and I don't have much, but I have so much at the same time. So
Yeah, it was like the epiphany moment of
it really
of
was
just like, wow. Because, when you're making sort of those life altering decisions, and I've had to make a few, obviously, for like some of my sailing trips and stuff. But, I think in a lot of situations, we get ourselves into these comfort zones.
Yeah.
And that, are sort of surrounded by things like homes and let's just say like toys and stuff like that, where you're like, oh, this is my key to happiness, is having this wall of these things. And you start to almost think like you need them.
Yeah.
And they become like a security blanket. But then, yeah, like I said, it's an interesting feeling when you basically break free of all that. And do it in the fashion you did. I mean, there's some people that obviously are in a financial position or whatever where they can do both, I suppose.
Sure.
So you still have that home base somewhere.
Yeah.
But then you're not really feeling that freedom in its purest form, where you're like, I got nowhere to go. There's no like point of reference anymore. It's just sort of like the open road. I mean, you took like a sabbatical from work.
Well, I
don't know if that's the right word or not. That's a big one for me.
Yeah. What does that mean? No. I mean, kind of, but not really. I worked. I ended up using, actually, before I went on the trip, I changed my cell phone plan so I could have a hotspot, like enough data.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That's what I used quite a bit, actually, because I didn't really end up going into towns and like coffee shops. I did that once and somehow I ended up at the one coffee shop that doesn't offer internet.
All right. Well, hey, out west, man, it's
It's different.
It's
You know,
different
there's like,
time.
no, but you
Different
know
time.
what that led me to was I ended up at this library in downtown Missoula, Montana.
Oh, cool.
Beautiful library and free Wi-Fi, great clean bathrooms, quiet, and I was able to go in there and like work and then kind of map out where I was heading next. But I had no idea I hadn't been in a library in years.
It
was great.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. There's that whole public service of, you know, and you know, here in Petoskey, well, the library in Petoskey was the old one was one of the Carnegie ones that he built, you know, like 5,000 of them back in the day. And the one in Petoskey was one of those, but up in Rockland, I utilized that for almost the same thing. I had to do a online virtual presentation a couple years ago. And yeah, I hadn't been in a library in forever. And I'm sort of like, there's people, you know, there's books everywhere. Everybody's, it was far more of a beehive of activity than, because I don't know, I guess back in our day, yeah, you had to go to the library. That was where you got all the books and stuff.
Right.
And now, you know,
You just jump on your phone.
Computer. You've got the entire library of the world on that little device.
Between the library and visitor centers, that's what I really loved going into, because I would say when we went on a trip to New Zealand, we had to use a hard copy map, right? Like,
Yeah,
there weren't really phones.
What year was that?
That was
2004?
2005, I think.
2005, yeah. So it would have been
So you-
pre-iPhone.
Yeah, you basically had an atlas for New Zealand, and like that's what you're flipping through, right?
Yeah, not one of us had a cell phone.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember going to those spots where you could pay for internet for like an hour or something, and that's where we'd like send our emails.
Internet
back to the family.
cafe.
Internet cafe.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember those. I remember the ones in Queenstown for sure.
But so when we left, my brother was like, hey, every time we cross a state line, we should get their map. And especially when we got into Montana. And that's what we did, and that's what I ended up doing for the rest of the trip.
Just going off the map.
Just going off the
Nice,
map.
dude,
I mean,
nice.
I certainly used my phone at times.
Yeah.
But the map was the one that really, I did find like certain areas, or I really used that for the like scenic byways. I always tried to basically take the road like either less traveled, as you would say, or anything scenic, anything that would take longer than normal. But that always ended up being like the best option. But going into these visitor centers, not only do they have a ton of information, obviously, in maps and things like that, but it was all these like really sweet older ladies, and they were just like, well, what are you doing? And I'm like, oh, I'm just trying to get a map. And they're like, well, where are you from? And then you tell them kind of what you're doing, and man, they just wanted to like sit down and show you all the, you know, you got to go here and check this spot out. And that actually, there was this one lady when I got into Washington, she really pointed me in a lot of really cool directions.
Local knowledge, man.
Local.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
You know, she loved it. So it was pretty fun.
Yeah, you're not going to get that sort of service from Siri or Alexa.
No, my Google phone's not going to tell me anything.
Not at all. Well, and I don't know, man. There's something to be said about that. I mean, I try not to get on that, you know, anti-smartphone train, because I know I go off the rails and I talk about it a lot. But I mean, this is a prime example, because you know, when I remember Ina and I did the drive from Charleston up to Michigan one year. I think it was for Christmas or something. Yeah. And when she got in the car, I was like, "Hey, we're not doing road maps, or we're not doing Google navigation stuff." I was like, "Here's an atlas," and she was like, "What?
How do you
do this?" I was like, "You'll figure it out." And I showed her some of the things, showed her the legend and stuff, and it was a full like U.S. one, so it was a booklet, but it was fun. I mean, and it kind of got her out of her comfort zone, because she. We'd be coming up to like Cincinnati, and there'd be construction on the bridge or something.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, oh, we got to reroute. And she's like, what? Flipping through the thing. She's like, I want to get my phone. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
No, that's awesome. That's really cool.
Yeah,
that you
right?
did that. Yeah.
I don't know. I think at the end of it, in a little bit of a way, she was kind of proud to be able to make it, you know, across our great country via a piece of paper.
There's something really cool about it.
Yeah, dude. It definitely. There's some I guess in the overall scheme of things, I think technology can be really helpful, especially like emergencies or whatever.
Sure.
But when you're trying to experience something in life, i.e., a road trip or an adventure or something like that, the old timey ways, man, they're
disconnect. I mean, it allows you to disconnect it
and be part of it. Like there's something about having that. And I find on a boat all the time, it's like you've got that chart. You're marking it down every 3 hours. Like you're watching your path. You're not looking at a screen telling you what's doing and what's going on. You're part of this, because if you don't sit there and update that thing, and if you don't, same with a road atlas, if you're not paying attention to those squiggly little lines,
right,
all of a sudden you're just lost. I don't know. I think it's cool, man. It's like adding a little bit of work to something like that, but in a great way.
Yeah, you got to put a little effort in, you know. Yeah. And that was we actually, when we got into Montana, we drove the Beartooth Mountain Pass, and that's like one of the byways or scenic. Dude. Yeah, and great name and phenomenal scenery. Like it was incredible. I mean, we constantly, like, there was Andy was kind of documenting some of that, just like doing little like video clips and photos and stuff, which was really great to have him there, because the kid's super creative and talented. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, for sure.
But there was this moment where I'm like, I'm pretty sure I just said, "Oh my God," like, 100 times just on this roadway here.
Yeah, like every corner.
You were just like,
God,
wow.
Look at that. Yeah. Well, it is. It's really, I've always found, because I did like a little stint in Bozeman, working as a ski lift operator one year, and I had been out there cross country a few times.
Yeah.
But like, Michigan, we've got the rolling hills and stuff, but you get out there and you see those mountains, those snow-capped peaks, and they're everywhere. It's not like, there's one. It's just like, wow, the entire horizon is now craggy peaks, like the Tetons, all stuff. And
there's something.
Wow. It just, the world seems way bigger.
Yep.
Way bigger.
There's just almost like I don't know. There was almost just some kind of like energy out there. You just feel it's
like
wild.
you almost get to where there's like data overload. There's so much visual.
Yeah.
That you're like, wow. I know it hits me really hard, because out on the ocean, there's not that. I mean, you can get that, I guess, with the sky a little bit, but for all intents and purposes out there, the view never changes. You just get these waves, and they're hypnotic and beautiful in their own right.
Right.
There's something about that out west, like big mountains, dude.
Could
you I couldn't even imagine going out to like Tibet, seeing the Himalayas or something.
No. I mean, that was, what actually struck me a lot was anytime I was like cruising, through, and you have some of those, like, those big valleys, or you're going through the mountains. I always thought back to just, gosh, what was it like, years ago when they were just, taking a horse through this area, or they're walking,
Yeah, right.
Wagons. What was that? Yeah, like, what was that like? And I just, that
fearsome
blew my
creatures mind. Around every corner, dude. Did you see any mountain lion or anything? Any bear?
I didn't see any mountain lion. I saw 3 bear when I did a trail.
Black or
in the North
grizzlies?
Cascades. Black
bears. Wow.
I mean, when we were in Montana, and then, so I got my brother basically to Bozeman. So we crossed into Montana, and we went to Mystic Lake to do a hike there. And then basically the next day we decided to do Yellowstone. And we basically drove the outer loop of it and hit every kind of major, or at least most of the major, kind of attractions.
Yeah. And geysers and lakes and all that. Yeah.
Yep. And then we were basically trying to get just south of Bozeman, because the next day he flew out.
Right.
But there, and you're in bear country for sure. Basically, once you just get into Montana, it seems like, especially the Beartooth Mountains, those like Custer National Forest. But when I got up into Northwest Montana, there were signs everywhere, like, you're in grizzly country.
Yeah, yeah.
And,
watch out, pal.
Watch out. I didn't see any, luckily. I didn't, but there were some spots where I certainly was like, okay, I am out here.
Yeah,
and there is
yeah, right.
no one around.
Although I'm sure that the rig that you had, even though you're in a tent because you're elevated on top of the vehicle, that must have felt a little bit.
I felt a little better about that. I would always now my bed was open, so, and that's where basically I took like a big 65-liter like Yeti cooler, and that was basically my fridge. So every like I would say 4 or 5 days, I'd just have to like re-up the ice.
Yeah.
But and then I had a bin that was essentially my kind of kitchen, or my pantry, I guess I would say. I'd have all my food that I was getting at normally.
Yeah.
Those two things.
Getting after some of them noodles.
Yeah, exactly. The freeze-dried food's not bad.
Yum Yum noodles. Remember those from back in the day?
Yeah. And so when I in some of those spots though, because unless you were in like a designated camp, maybe like a national forest campground or something like that, where they had designated spots, which I stayed at some, but not a lot. Some of those would have the
like
the bear bins, right? So you could put your cooler or your food in there.
Those things are like a freaking safe.
It's
dude.
like a tent. Yeah.
They're not flimsy like
No.
cans.
No.
You have to like get your hand in and do
In
the
there
opening thing, and like it's like
Yeah, it's huge.
yeah. And sometimes you find them mangled and ripped open.
Yeah. So there wasn't. Well, I pulled up to one spot once, dude, and there was fur and feathers just littered everywhere.
Yeah, right.
I'm like, should I stay here?
Yeah, dude. Oh man.
But for the most part, I would put my food in my truck.
Yeah.
And then being up, I just felt a little more safe.
Right.
Yeah.
I can remember we did a little bit of a version of that in Australia like 2 decades ago, but we were on a place called Fraser Island, and they have dingoes, lots of them. And like they got into our cooler one night, but there was a day where they came out and they sort of like surrounded our little camp.
Yeah.
There were 3 of us, and I think all of us ended up on top of the truck that we
Really?
rented. Yeah, and we were just kind of sitting there like waiting it out. We weren't like throwing anything at them, but they were investigating. We had to watch them sort of go around our thing because they're intimidating. They're dogs.
Yeah.
They're smallish, but they'll 4 or 5 of them, and you're sort of like, oh, well,
It's a little pack.
Hold on now.
Yep.
Team effort, boys.
I see what's happening here.
I should have given you a copy of Stephen Herrero's Bear Attacks, Their Causes and Avoidance.
Oh, yeah.
It's like the end all. It's the last word on bear attacks in North America.
Wow.
And it's like, it gives you all the gruesome stories. Most of them are from the 60s.
Yeah.
Back when they used to do like bear dumps, where like garbage dumps were so that bears would come and eat for viewing pleasure of the audience. And that just basically homogenized them to, I don't know if that's the right word, but
food with
humans, and just get into human food because it's so tasty. Like there was one story they talk about, and I'm sure it was up in Glacier, but this problem bear that they had to eventually kill was like 700 something pounds, and it was like a young adult. It was like a teenager, and they were like, how is it even possible for this thing to gain that much weight that fast? And it was just because it was eating human junk food for like probably its whole life.
That's insane.
Yeah. And just
They're big,
dude, I've only seen brown bears or black bears, East Coast ones.
Yeah.
But you see some of these videos of the big ones, the big boys. Jeez.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure up in Alaska, though, some of those suckers get up above 1,000 pounds.
Oh yeah, like 1,500 pounds or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's like the record one some hunter killed or whatever.
Yeah,
It was 1,500
I definitely did. I read up on it a bit before I left. Like, because somebody asked me, they were like, "Well, you're going into some territory that like you've never been in."
Yeah,
I'd done some like smaller trips out west, but like I'd never done this, especially solo. And they're like,
Was it enough to get you a little nervous?
well, yeah, it was like, so what do you do when a mountain lion is stalking you? What's up with a bear?
Fun
or
fact
like
about the mountain
an
lions:
elk?
you just don't know. You just
that's-
die,
yeah, true.
because they're stalking you, and like the only thing you might hear like the sound of its fur whooshing through the air as it chomps your neck.
Yeah,
You're like,
exactly.
"Oh,
And
that's what it's like." Dad. Those creatures, man. Cats are just a whole.
Yeah. I didn't really think about them much when I was out there, and I also
I don't think
wasn't
it's
really
worth it.
in that territory. And that was the other thing too. When I would read about, grizzlies and things like that, a lot of I think there was definitely like, hey, here's be smart.
Yeah.
This is what you need to do. At the same time, don't let it freak you out. I remember this one guy's just kind of comment of, I've been out in the wilderness and kind of, dispersed camping or whatnot, overlanding for 20 years, all in Montana. And he's like, I've seen some bear, but I've never come across a situation that made me feel like, threatened or uncomfortable. And he's like, just be smart about it and, don't be an idiot. Like, don't leave your food out at night all over your campsite.
Keep a clean campsite, people.
Exactly. But even down to the, don't take, if you're cooking in your clothing or like your chapstick, like don't have that in your tent and stuff like that. I didn't realize any of that.
Oh yeah.
Stuff,
That stuff is because you get like cherry flavored chapstick or something like that.
Yeah.
Shout out that song, cherry flavored chapstick. I don't know that. I don't know that. Well, I think a comparison could be drawn, between like mountain lions and bears for some of the sea creatures. I would consider like the bear of the ocean to be, whales or something like that.
Yeah.
So big lumbering things. They can do a lot of damage. They're probably not out there to harm you, but every once in a while they sink a boat here and there.
Yep.
But the mountain lion, I'd have to compare that to an inanimate object of like a half submerged container that you might plow into because
Can't see it.
You don't know it's coming, and
Then it takes you down.
Yeah, there's nothing you can do about it. Like
Yep.
a mountain lion is literally like the bodybuilder.
Right.
I mean, when you look at, we were lucky, to go to Africa many, many years ago and see, a lioness and just chiseled arms, shoulders, just
Pure
full
muscle.
muscle, a head that's, 2 feet wide, chomp a gazelle. You're just like, what?
Yeah. Scary.
That thing is, and who knows how much it weighs? Like 400
It's
pounds.
built to do that. Like, yeah.
Lightning fast.
Yeah.
Jinx has, shout out Colin, friend of the show. He's at Random at his store downtown. He's got a grizzly paw print that's like plastered.
Oh, cool.
Right there on the desk. This
it's
thing
huge.
is that big.
Yeah.
And you look at it, you're like, that's not real. He's like, oh yeah, it is. Absolutely, it's real.
Huge.
Huge.
Yeah.
Bro.
Yeah. I can't imagine.
Yikes. But you didn't feel the need to have like a firearm, or did you have like
I didn't have
bear spray or anything?
I had bear spray.
You did have bear spray. Okay.
I did not have a firearm. I was asked if I wanted to take one, and I said no because I've never really. That's not my thing. I've never really shotgun. So, but I did have bear spray, and anytime I did a hike, I took that with me, and mostly because every hike I was doing was in bear country.
Yeah.
And then, anytime I would, if I knew I was in bear country, I think every time I would put it up in my tent. I'd have it with me.
Just in
outside
case,
of
yeah.
that, I had like a hatchet.
I'll get you.
Yeah, that might get me 2 extra seconds or something.
Well, and that's they have obviously all sorts of different procedures and protocols for what you do when you see those. Because my only experience was always black bears, so
Yeah.
you're supposed to intimidate as quick, and like it's got to be like split second decision. Like you come around a corner and there's a big black bear there, like immediately you should start
Getting big.
trying to intimidate, get big, move. That way it doesn't, it gets so surprised, and all of a sudden there's a big noisy thing, and it's like, get me out of here. What's this? It doesn't have time to think and process and be like, backpack.
Well, that's why they tell you to like just be loud on the trail.
Yeah,
let them
yeah.
know you're coming because they don't
really
want to mess
want-
with you.
yeah.
Yeah, it was more like if you come across a moose or elk or something, they were like, just run.
yeah.
Just like turn the other direction and get out of there
Well, I believe
because they don't care.
a bull moose in the rut season is,
Aggressive.
I think, the most dangerous animal in North America.
Yeah,
and
that's
Canada.
like what I
Kills
read.
so many people.
It was like, you probably don't need to worry about mountain lions. You're not even going to see them. The bear don't really want to mess with you, and if you're loud, you're not going to see them either. But if you come around a corner and there's a big ass moose there, like
they get a little territorial.
Yeah, get out of the way.
That guy Les Stroud, the Survivor man, I remember watching one of his videos, and he told this story about basically getting chased for a long time, like an afternoon, by this bull moose, and he ended up having to like swim across the pond and trying to get to this canoe. And he's like, he has tons of experience, obviously, in the wilderness, but he's like, there's nothing scarier than a bull moose in the rut. Like he won't even. I think a lot of people won't even go out into moose territory during that season because it's just. I mean, I can remember we were in Maine, getting close within like a day's hike of Mount Katahdin for the end of the AT, and there were like 5 of us. We're all tromping down the old trail, and then just out of nowhere, like a adolescent moose is sort of trotting down the trail towards us, and we just literally sidestepped. And it didn't even blink an eye, just poof, right past us.
Wow.
And we're just like, geez. And you see them in the mud of the trail. You see their hoof prints all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Because they just use it. Most of the forest up there in Maine is like the, small pine, scrub brush. It's super thick. You wouldn't even be able to like walk into
it.
And you've got this big, beautiful trail. So all these animals and Sasquatch and everything just freaking... Cruising on the highway, man.
That's what. So when I was in Washington, I was up in the North Cascades. That's when I saw 3 black bear.
Yeah. Oh, I thought you were gonna say that's where we started hearing the noises of the Bigfoot. That's Bigfoot country.
Yeah,
up there,
I know. Yeah. And those instances though, I didn't have to get big, didn't have to get loud. Actually, the first time I saw it, this hike was it was difficult. It was steep. It was hard. So you were like, you're pushing yourself. Right?
Yeah.
And I get up to this one kind of plateau area, and there's this guy standing there, and I was like, "Hey, how's it going?" And he just kind of looked at me and like didn't even say a word. And I was like, "Oh, that's interesting. Okay."
Whoa.
And then I looked up, and there was just a huge black bear, just like right off the trail. And
oh, really?
He didn't say anything because he was just like kind of standing there watching it.
Oh, no shit. Wow.
And that was my first time seeing one out in the wild.
How big do you think it was?
It wasn't the biggest one I saw, but I mean, I was
300 pounds probably.
Oh yeah. Easy.
Jeez.
I mean, it's big.
Yeah.
And I definitely had that moment of like, whoa. Like if that thing wanted to just turn and run towards us.
Have a squirt of adrenaline.
Like I'm probably not going to be able to do much in this moment because I'm just kind of caught off guard.
Intimidate.
Yeah. But it just, it was just minding its own business, just kind of eating, and just kind of hanging out. And then this guy he didn't move. Like he just kind of stood there. And so it finally kind of kept meandering off a little further, and I felt like, okay, I'm gonna keep pushing, higher, and hopefully it'll be fine coming back down. But then I think
as you were leaving, were you like, "Nice talking to you, sir"?
Yeah, it was definitely weird. I was like, man, that guy wasn't that. Like, where's the trail etiquette?
Yeah, right?
Like, can at least say hi.
Yeah, right.
Being from the Midwest, I guess.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think a part of the allure of the American West though is the you get your own space.
You totally do.
And
yeah, it's wide open.
Somebody else comes along, you're sort of like there's an old story about Daniel Boone, and when he started he kept on kind of migrating more and more west. He'd like have a homestead, and if he saw like smoke from a campfire, 5 miles away on another kind of hilltop, he'd be like, too crowded. He'd be like,
I gotta move.
And he'd go further out. That's some serious self-imposed solitude.
There's something about that though. I mean, when I would post up at spots, and if anyone was like, if I even saw someone close, I would just keep going further. Like, I wanted to get these. You get used to kind of getting to some of those areas where there's just no one within miles,
Yeah.
But
and it's a good feeling. I've always enjoyed, obviously putting myself in a position where I'm the only person around for hundreds of miles
Well, yeah,
sometimes.
you-
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, it's a bit extreme on my end for sure.
Sure.
But the feeling is still the same, where you look around and there's nobody. You're isolated, and there's something nice. There's also something a little unnerving about it in some ways, but
that's good.
it's good. It's good to get out of that
Comfort
zone and get a little nervous. Get the old spidey sense peeking, where you're sort of, I don't know. There's something about it. Maybe it's just an ingrained thing in our. It taps into the ancestral person that's inside of everybody.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think that feels good. I think it's healthy.
That's like, so that was probably the biggest thing I found that I got from that trip was pushing that comfort zone quite a bit.
Yeah.
And, on that trail, I think that was the trail. I mean, I did some amazing hikes, like just mind blowing,
and some
scenery.
cold plunge freaking stuff in some of those lakes.
Well, so that started when Andy and I, this was kind of funny. We jumped in Lake Superior, right? I think we were in Minnesota right before we kind of pushed out of that zone. And we just did that fun. It was pretty cold out. It was like raining and 50. And so we jumped in. We were like, oh, sweet. And we're like, okay.
That lake is cold.
That was cold.
That lake is freezing. And you hit it at like the warmest time it is, right?
It didn't compare to some of these ones.
Oh,
Montana.
really?
Oh, dude.
Well, snow melt and glacial.
I went up to one, this glacier one. And there was like, honestly, there was ice caps. Or icebergs, like little ones, like floating.
Oh my god,
that was certainly the coldest one. And I hiked all the way in. It was I think it was over 11 miles, and I took my suit and this like really thin poncho so I could change there, and jump in. But my brother and I, when we got into Montana, this was kind of a funny story. I think he was driving. And we were cruising past Billings, Montana.
Yeah.
And he saw this sign for custom cowboy hats. And he's like, we're going. And I was like, okay, sure, man, whatever.
Cowboy hat.
And so we walk into the store. And we were the only ones in there. And the owners were there. And it's one of the authentic places where it's called Rand's Custom Hats, and it's where they literally make from scratch to your head a custom cowboy hat.
Yeah.
It's where the like presidents and celebrities and musicians,
wow.
all these people go, and they had all their names and photos and stuff like that. Anyways, we spent like an hour in there, trying on all these different hats.
Yeah.
And we found some. It was fun, but they were asking us where we're headed next, and we were like, well, there's this place called Mystic Lake, and there's a hike, and we want to go, there. And this kid kind of chimes up in the back, and he's like, "You trying to go there tonight?" And we're like, "Yeah." And he's like, "What are you trying to do that?" And we're like, "Well, we just want to go swimming." And the guy's like, "What? Like, why would you want to do that?
Like, how it's freezing?
Cold? Yeah." And we're like, "Well, we're gonna do it tonight." And he's like, "Yeah, I don't know if you want to do that. Like, it's not a small, like it takes a while, right?" Which I'm glad we didn't, because it wasn't like a super hard hike, but having been driving for 2 days straight or 2.5 days or whatever, and it being our first hike with some elevation, it was definitely,
How long was the hike to go?
It was overall, I think it was 6 miles, so nothing crazy.
Yeah. Well, still though, that's you gotta exert.
But there was some elevation, and we ended up going to this lake. Gorgeous lake, and swimming, and it was just us. No one was there.
Yeah.
And that kind of started this whole thing. Anytime there was a lake, we would jump in.
Dude.
And then when Andy left, I just kind of continued that, cold plunging, I guess.
Yeah.
Any place I found. And that was essentially also where I would shower. It was either a lake or a river.
Yeah.
Trip,
But man, that cold is brutal sometimes. It makes me, the thought of it has always interested me, like the whole cold plunge thing. But yeah, we got a lake down there,
and you're not jumping in it.
And there's part of me, honestly, inside of my brain that's like, dude, you should go do that right now.
It's a wake up. I loved it. On the trip, I became a little addicted to it. Like, it was just, anytime we did it in Yellowstone, there were 2 different lakes we hit there. And then anytime I, would find one or even just a river,
Yeah.
I would just pull off and jump in just for the hell of it, and it was fun.
Well, I don't know. It's always it's kind of an experience and stuff. I mean, I can remember on the AT, probably the most pathetic one I ever did. I had been in the woods for maybe 5 days, really disgusting at that point. It was hot because it was in Connecticut or something like that, and there was this little creek. It couldn't have been more than 2 inches deep, and I tried to shower and bathe in it. And I remember at one point, I'm in there and I'm naked. Trail's right there. And I just laid down in the creek and I'm splashing around.
If somebody comes by right now,
sees me, I'm kind of covering myself with more mud and dirt than I'm cleaning. But I was just trying to wash the stank off me before I strolled into town.
Oh yeah, smart.
Yeah, I mean, AT hikers are
they kind of know,
they're known that you smell them before you see them,
Yeah.
and it doesn't take a little bit. It only takes a little bit effort to kind of clean up a little bit before you get into town.
Yeah.
But
No, that's fun.
who knows? Well, I've heard. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of information about the cold plunges, and I have no idea. I'm not an expert, but from what I understand, it's really good for inflammation and all that stuff. It shocks your body into this sort of rebuild mode of, I don't know.
Even just the, outside of all, I think certainly there are benefits. It's the challenge of it that,
When your feet
it's quick,
touch it,
but
and you're
it's, from a mental standpoint, you get through something that's challenging. And so afterwards, you feel not only invigorated because it's freezing, cold, but, you just accomplished something. And so it's a great way, to either start your day or whatnot. But, I didn't really have a lot of other options either when it
exactly right.
shower, trying to clean up.
Well, I mean, on Sparrow, my shower is like a gallon jug of water, and I poke a bunch of holes in it and stuff. And a lot of times if I really want to scrub up super hard, I'll get buckets of salt water.
Oh yeah,
and sort of, but soap doesn't really suds up in salt water very well. But sometimes I would throw the heater on and boil up some of the water and add that to the mix, and then it's nice and warm or whatever. But I don't know. I think I enjoyed more where I just took the water and it's cold and you're dumping cold water on you, and it just like you said, it's but then afterwards you're kind of yeah. And I mean, I'm sure it's some masculine thing, but kind of makes you feel like a man.
Oh yeah, you kind of
need warm water.
You're flexing a little bit, just probably because your body's shivering, but you're definitely oh yeah, I'm all juiced up now, I'm ready to go.
There's something very manly about it.
No, it's fun.
Yeah, it is. It is pretty cool, man. But yeah, there's a lot of times where, man, you take your first step into some cold water and you're just like, what am I getting into?
Yeah,
that is really cold.
That was the when I walked into the Glacier Lake. It was Grinnell, Glacier Lake, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that was going to be cold, but it was just shockingly freezing. I've never experienced, we jumped into Walloon when there's been ice on the lake and things like that, or right when the ice lifts, but this was a whole,
top to bottom, that's freezing. Yeah.
Hard to catch your breath, because I would always jump, not swim around, but I would jump in, get under, and then just kind of try and sit in it for a second,
Yeah.
And that one was,
well, and that's the thing about it is how long are you trying to stay in there? It's not just I jump in and I run out. You're trying to immerse yourself in it for.
Yeah, I think for any of the benefits, it sounds like you're supposed to, you're supposed to do it supposedly first thing in the morning. But if you're going to do any kind of cold immersion, I guess after a workout or something like that, a few minutes, I think, at a certain, temperature. But, even just for me, when I do the cold showers, it's more just it wakes me up. It's a challenging thing first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
And, I accomplish it. So it's a good way to start my day. And there's honestly been times where I've had a headache or something like that, and it'll take it away.
Yeah.
Just from, and this is a 2-3 minute cold shower, it's So I don't know. It's crazy, but
Interesting.
you get really used to it, and then I've become it's just what I do now.
You're
So,
a cold water addict.
Yeah, exactly.
Go to AA for that.
But
I can't use warm water.
I'm saving on my energy bills.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Hey, man, that's nice for the old carbon footprint.
It is,
I
yeah.
appreciate your service to the planet.
I'm just trying,
I'm just trying to help every shower I can.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's definitely, I don't know. It's funny that idea of like, it's a challenge that you undertake like straight away to basically, succeed first thing in the morning, and then you go about your day. I don't know. There's something cool about that.
There is,
that whole idea of like how you face your day and starting with something that it's so counterintuitive, but it's like uncomfortable,
Yeah.
not enjoyable, but like you do it and it makes you feel so good after.
Totally.
I don't know. It's
And it makes the warm showers, like, I take those sometimes like in the evening or something, it makes those even more enjoyable. You kind of sit in that.
you're like,
but
oh, treat. That's
Yeah.
that's dessert right
it
there.
is. Yeah. It's
Eat your vegetables and
Yeah.
then you get your dessert.
yeah. But but yeah, it kind of goes back to that, like, living on the edge of your comfort zone, like doing things that like push you outside of your comfort zone. It's not comfortable to stand in freezing cold water.
No,
Even
not
though
at
it's a couple minutes, but yeah, that's, I would say that the bears were definitely a few times where I was definitely pushing that comfort level, of like, how close are these things?
Yeah,
And,
yeah,
like,
right.
Am I doing, because there was just one bear, actually, when I summited that trail and I was coming back down, there was one that was bigger than the first one I saw. Mm-hmm. He was pretty far out, so I didn't really have any worries about him, but I was just like, wow, that thing, it was like double the size of the other one.
Right.
But I went a little further, and there was another black bear on the trail, and this one just chilled on the trail. It was just walking the trail in front of me. So
Utilizing the highway.
that's exactly what it was doing. And like, it would veer off a little bit, I would be able to go a little bit, and then it would come right back on. And there were a few
That's
times
scary, dude.
where, I'm probably, 60 feet away from the thing, like 80 feet away from the thing. I never felt I mean, obviously you feel a little uncomfortable, but like, I never felt like, I guess if it wanted to turn and run at you,
Yeah, I was going to say,
it could have.
if it was like looking at you.
Right. But it was just doing its thing.
Right,
And
right.
It ended up people ended up like, there weren't a lot of people on this trail where I was at, but
Traffic jam.
there was a traffic jam, and I was kind of like leading it at first, because everyone was like, well, we're not going to go around this guy, like the bear's right there, so we're just going to wait to see what he does.
the big guy. Let the big guy
Yeah,
go
exactly.
first. Nick will do it. All right, folks, just stay behind
Hold
me.
back.
Yeah.
I know what I'm doing. I've never seen a bear in my life.
Oh my God, where's my bear spray?
Yeah. How do you use this thing?
It's okay, folks. Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Well, so in the grand scheme of the adventure, do you think that you found what you were sort of searching for? I know that's
a good question. I don't know. It's funny you asked that, because I think in the beginning I knew going on a trip like this, because I didn't know really where I was going, right? So the trip started with this idea originally, actually, of just getting to Idaho and traveling Idaho and doing this kind of dispersed camping. And I also had never done that before, so that was pretty, it was a bit intimidating, I think, at first. So, and then it, every day I'd kind of wake up and just go, okay, where am I heading today? Where do I want to go? What looks cool on a map or something like that?
Yeah.
And I would research it, but I kind of went into it with this idea of like, I'm going to find something, like it's going to be a soulful trip, right? Or it's going to be enlightening in some way, or, it's going to open my eyes up to a certain, like, what I want to do or direction.
Yeah.
And I think in the beginning I was almost trying to force that. Like I was searching for that. I was waiting for almost the light bulb. I was waiting for the epiphany to hit me and go, oh yeah, this is,
Yeah,
And-
you almost can't even have that in your mindset.
no.
You have to like just let it go and let it come.
Yeah. And it kind of consumed my mind in the beginning.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
was
right.
something I was constantly thinking about, which, yeah, isn't, it's not the way to do it, but I don't know. I mean, I think having done the trip and getting back, I realized that there were a lot of moments, like the moments to me that stood out was when I was living kind of on the edge of that comfort zone for myself
Yeah.
in whatever fashion that looked like. And I found growth in those moments. I found confidence in those moments. I felt progress. But I don't, and maybe that is what I found, just that, you
Yeah.
know, which was enough in and of itself. But I wouldn't say I got back and walked away from it being like, you know, I found what I was
exactly what I've got to do.
Yeah, you know, because I think there was a lot of, you know, I had friends and things like that, and even family being like, "This can be a trip of a lifetime," and you know, you're gonna go find yourself, and you know, all those kind of
Right.
and that's all great. It's all like supportive and awesome, but if anything, you know, as I said, I was still working, and some of the days that I did work and the views were incredible. It was very inspiring. But if I could have, because that was the one thing that essentially kept me back, right? That brought me back.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't have any of the material possessions at that point. There was nothing to like, you know, there was no responsibility outside of that. I would have probably stayed out a lot longer.
Yeah.
In not necessarily in search of whatever it was I was searching for, but just from a standpoint of, you know, I think what it told me was I was looking for adventure. I was looking for something to make me feel a little bit more alive, to make me feel like I was doing some things that were uncomfortable,
Yeah.
and getting through those moments. And you know, you gain a lot of self-confidence in those moments. So that's probably the biggest thing I took away from it.
Well, and it's very it's kind of counterintuitive, but it's like you find purpose in an unpurposeful wandering of, you know, new to you places.
Yeah.
Where, you know, maybe you have a general idea of where you're trying to go, but essentially you're just trying to sort of experience the day and see the new stuff. And I definitely hear you on getting like a little bit pulled out of the immersion effect by something like having to, you know, check into work or do that for a few hours or whatever. But yeah, I don't know, when you are immersed in that, in that natural state, that natural sense, so you're getting just this visual that's all encompassing, and you're isolated, so it's just you. So your senses are sort of peaked a little bit. I don't know. I think those are the times where you're more likely to have those ideas, have those thoughts, and have the things that sort of bring direction to your life.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. I don't know if I'm not articulating that very well, but
Well, for me, I found there was something. It was like three scenarios where I always found where that's where all of a sudden I could just feel something. It was like when I'm out in the open road, right, and I'm cruising from maybe like one point to the next, or and sometimes that wasn't even just on the open road. It was like down this old Forest Service road, and
yeah, right.
it was super challenging, and like
Pay attention.
you're just really
There's another
you're
tree.
really in the moment.
Get the hatchet out.
Don't hit that jagged rock and blow your
Yeah,
sidewall
right.
out, you know. Or on some of these hikes, you know, because you're really in it, right? The view is just incredible. Every time you come around the bend or the next corner or whatever, you get a little higher up. You're just like, holy shit, dude, this is insane out here.
Yeah.
And then, yes, like you said, like being completely isolated. There's no one around. I mean, you don't hear any human activity whatsoever. Those are kind of the 3 moments where I think, the most alive, and I felt the most like something's happening, you know, something's turning inside of me. That's like, and again, I didn't know really, it wasn't like necessarily pointing me in a certain direction, but it was the first time in a while that I was just like, wow, this is incredible. And that feeling, whatever that is, that became like addictive.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why I sense like, God, I could have kept doing it longer. And I want to, you know, obviously I invested in this rig and, you know, building all this out and all this gear and stuff like that. So the goal is to continue to do, you know, more trips like this.
Right.
But it was that feeling that became very addictive of like, ooh, there's something to this. There's something here. This is, and I guess I go back to saying it's like the adventure aspect of it. And you really just, you feel alive. And I'm sure that you've had those, you know, moments, right? Where out in the open ocean, where you're just like, wow.
It can be also a bit of a dangerous game because you, like, say you go and find yourself at, you know, the most isolated spot that you've been in so far, right? Say it's some crazy lake on some mountaintop somewhere.
Sure.
And you get that feeling and you're just like, whoa. And then, you know, a few days goes by or something like that, and you're sort of like, well, how can I go further? You know, I want to, because it seems like, to me, and I get it when, you know, when I venture off into the ocean, there's a special feeling when you look on a chart and you're in the middle.
Yeah.
And like, you know, the Azores are 800 miles north of you, and, you know, there really isn't anything within a 500-mile radius but just open ocean. And there's something that feels really good, and it's sort of like, well, where's the next bigger ocean? And I've been 30 miles from the furthest you can get on the planet.
Yeah, that's
Point
wild.
Nemo.
That's
and,
wild.
You know, I wouldn't exactly have a pilgrimage to go and be exactly in Point Nemo, because Point Nemo is, I believe you have a radius of 1,600 miles of open ocean around you, like a circle. I think it equates to 8.8 million square miles of empty ocean all around you. And it's down kind of in the Southern Ocean part of the Pacific. But I don't know, man. It's one of those things where you find those places, and it is that you're like, well, we got to do another one. We got to do next. What's bigger? And that's where it gets dangerous, where you're like, oh, I want to get a little more out there, a little more exposed. And, you know, you find yourself eventually in a place you get into some trouble, you know, that sort of thing. So you have to be careful in that respect.
Well, and I think, for what you're doing and what you did do, right, that's, you're out, like, there's, like, you know, the first Forest Service road I went down in Montana, and you just feel it. You're like, well, I'm heading, like this road is going to, like, who knows where.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I had an idea of like, okay, I think it's going to be 20, 30 miles on this road.
Right.
But you can just tell that you're leaving like civilization. Like there's really nothing around you.
Yeah.
I would still see people here and there. And on those ones, I never got into a situation where I felt like if something went wrong, like let's say I blow a tire or whatever, like, oh man, I'm screwed out here, right? Because again, I'm self-sustaining, right? And you're on land.
You get a little first aid kit and stuff, right?
Yeah. I think that's what my mom's gift was, like a first aid kit before I left.
Smart.
But I know, thanks, Mom.
Those things come in handy, man.
Yeah, no, they do. And but it was like the next time I got into Idaho, there was like a worse road, and I'm like, well, I did that one.
Yeah,
I'm gonna do this one next. And then it was like, you know, the next one, I was like, okay, well,
progressively,
yeah. And again, like, okay, yeah, on some of those roads, there was this one in Idaho where if I would have like blown a tire, even though I had the patch kit, even though I had the air compressor, like I got all that stuff just in case.
Yeah,
you're in a shitty spot.
Yeah,
like
right.
This is gonna be pretty difficult. Again, you're gonna die? No,
probably not. Probably not. Maybe.
Probably not. Yeah,
Maybe.
I guess
that's part of the allure, though.
Yeah,
you know? You can't have the true adventure without a little bit of risk involved, I think.
Yeah.
I mean,
no, for sure, that's part of it, right? The risk or getting lost. Like I definitely got lost a few times, and
Oh, yeah. No
Like,
better way to be found.
no,
than-
exactly. Well, that was the
by
one
getting
that
lost.
I think you even said it was the clip where I just kept going up and up.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like, I had to have taken a wrong turn. Like,
This thing just keeps going up.
yeah, what? I thought I was going out. Like, why? And I guess I have to go up to get down, but that was certainly the worst road I've ever been on too. So
Yeah,
that
yeah,
was
right.
a sense of adventure for sure.
Yeah, that's cool, man. Well, I can't thank you enough for sort of sharing a lot of this experience, because there's going to be a time where we get to an age where doing stuff like that's just no longer really an option.
Yeah.
Right. And it's sad. It's a circle of life, whatever. It's bound to happen. And I think if anything, that should be a prod for getting out there and doing things like that while we can.
Yeah.
I've often said that I want to get to a point, I want to see so much and do so much that I get to a point before I'm dead where all I want to do is sit on a porch and watch the squirrels run around. That's it. I've done it all. Maybe read some books, enjoy other people's adventures. I'm not there yet, but I don't know. I'm closing in on it, as I reach middle age and everything.
Well, you've done some pretty epic.
Yeah, but so have you. All these adventures come in various degrees and on different scales.
Right.
And as long as, it can be something as small as taking a day hike somewhere, or
Yeah.
as big as
Just getting out
sailing around the world, I guess. And you're going to gain different stuff from each experience for sure. But like that underlying theme of getting out of my comfort zone, a little bit risky.
Yeah.
I'm going to see something new. I used to have it's like a three requirements for every adventure. And I'd have to look in my journal to see, because I wrote it right in the beginning, way back like in 2012. I think 2001 was when I first started doing that stuff or writing in a journal. And it was like, you have to challenge yourself. You have to see something new. And I think it was, you have to grow as a person or something.
Yeah.
I don't know, it was a little hoity-toity, I suppose, but I don't know. I think that's the recipe for like a good adventure. When you put yourself in that situation, those three things are going to come true.
Yeah.
During that time.
Yeah. I think the hardest part is just doing it. Like once you like just start, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I was more intimidated going on this trip for a variety of reasons. Having one being solo,
Like
never
in the
doing it.
planning section.
Yeah, I was
leading
very
up to
much
it.
like, I don't know I've never done this. I mean, when we were kids growing up camping, either doing it in like a tent, with your parents, you're doing a pop up or like an RV or something. Like this was definitely outside of my comfort zone. Just being alone that long was something I'm not familiar with, and going out west. And if you ever have the opportunity, go west. Like it's
we live
insane.
in a ridiculously beautiful country.
It's insanely
Insane.
gorgeous. I've never seen. I mean, yes, I haven't traveled all over the world, but like, I was blown away, and there's so much more to see. But I was more intimidated, I think, starting the trip, and then once I just did it, and then you accomplish those small steps, whether that's growth or you get outside your comfort zone in one scenario, you're like, oh, I can do this. And
Yeah, right.
holy
And
shit, this feels good.
it actually feels good.
Yeah,
right.
And so, you know,
Well, and those what ifs can stop and prevent you from moving forward in every aspect of life. Like and it's so easy to get inside your head and start thinking like, oh well,
here's all the reasons I can't
what
do
if
this.
what if I get in a lightning storm on that ridge, or what if
Right.
unless you just sort of I mean the sort of mind trick that I always do is I don't try and cut off thoughts like that, because obviously you get them, you can't control what thoughts kind of go into your brain, but I just replace them with other ones and focus on those. If I was out in the woods and I start thinking about bears,
Right.
I'm not doing myself any favors by getting spooked on every broken twig and freaking out. But yeah, I'd just be like, all right, well, let's think about this. Let's think about like sailing a Hobie. Let's think, and you focus in on that, and then sooner or later, the idea of the whole bear thing kind of drifts away and gets shelved, and then
Yeah,
you're free of it again.
You gotta let the thought come in and then pass through,
And just
right?
pass, right? And
Yeah,
not
you can't
hyper
dwell on
focus on it. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I wish I had like a key for unlocking how you make that leap and how you don't let the what ifs and the fear
Self-doubt.
stop you from actually, jumping out into it. And it's something that I don't know, even when I was in my early 20s and stuff, I used to have this rule when I was looking for yacht deliveries, when I was doing that. If there was one that, and you're looking at like a website with, 50 different job offers, and some of them are like, deckhand on a blah, 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 and being down in here, or sailing from, Charleston down to Fort Lauderdale. And then you'd come across one where it's like, March Atlantic crossing, Caribbean to Turkey. And instantly I read it and I'm a little nervous. I'm like, it's like a 68-foot boat. Ooh, that's like definitely way out of my comfort zone. And that'd be the one that I'd email. I'd be like, okay, if it makes you nervous,
Yeah, do it.
investigate it at least. I mean, I think you have to trust your instincts sometimes. It's weird. It's like a little catch-22 where you want to take yourself out of your comfort zone. You want to challenge yourself, but also you kind of have to listen to yourself too, because you don't want your brain to be like, yeah, hey, dude, that's really dangerous. You could really die on that.
Right.
And if you don't listen to yourself, sometimes you can find yourself in trouble. So it's a weird like
Balance.
tightrope sort of thing. Yeah.
I think like for me, I was reading quite a bit before I left, and I came across this passage, and it was basically just talking about how growth and progress in life and that search and that feeling of feeling alive comes when you're living on the edge of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
That stuck with me. And so that was a big part of kind of my inspiration going into the trip, was that mentality of, I've been really comfortable for a while, and you get comfortable with, if you have your house or you have these possessions or you get into these routines, there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
But they do, as we talk about technology and cell phones, and like it almost becomes a bit of a distraction in a way, where when you push on the edge of your comfort zone, like I left all that behind. I went this direction. I didn't know what was in store for myself. That's when I started feeling most alive, right? And I think it's really easy to get caught up in just what you're doing daily and your routine and feeling very comfortable. But man, I wouldn't even say if you have the opportunity, make the opportunity to do some type of adventure. It doesn't have to be big. It can be small.
Come in any size you want.
Yeah.
Any sort of safety level too. But it does have to put you sort of a little bit closer to the edge, I think. And
absolutely.
That's,
there's something about that, and there's something there that feeling it's incredible.
It's great, man.
Yeah,
it really is.
It's easy to lose sight of, and so I was grateful to have had the opportunity to feel that and be like, oh, okay, I haven't felt that in a while. We need to go after that a little bit more in life.
Yeah, right. Well, and I think to that point, when you're younger, I think one of the reasons everybody always looks back on, their childhood years and the early teenage years as like, oh, this wonderful, like everything's new, because it is. Like it's the first time you're experiencing all these things. And so you have that feeling a lot. And then as you get older, it sort of dissipates, because like you said, I mean, you do get into sort of these routines. Civilized routines of career, job, get a house, do this, have kids, whatever, get married. And you get hyper focused on that. And essentially you lose that little adventure side, because, the status quo is, if you're trying to build something, get the house and get all that, don't risk things like by going on an adventure, sir. Geez, that's dangerous. Why would you do that? You've got a house. that
Yeah.
you can, stay in, and you want to protect having that and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, I mean, that's not, it's not living the way
No.
you live on an adventure, and you're not going to feel that zest and that just like
What is that?
that
Yeah,
wonder
so,
and
yeah.
everything. And it is, I've often said that, like, when I'm out at sea, you almost enter a bit more of like a childlike state of mind.
Totally.
Because you're surrounded by nature, you're not distracted, and you're in this world of wonder.
Yep.
And it comes with the territory.
Wanderlust,
and
yeah.
I don't know, call it a little dopamine hit or whatever is going on chemically in your brain.
Totally.
But you wouldn't think that by just doing something and seeing something, it could affect you mentally as much as it can, but it does. I mean, you really, more than taking a pill or smoking something or whatever,
Yeah.
you go out and spend a day completely sober of anything like that, and you can have these great therapeutic, healthy, lovely, like mental clarity moments. And yeah, you don't need any sort of chemical
No.
except for, whatever's happening in your brain when you're in that environment,
Yeah.
in that situation. So
Yeah.
I don't know, I could get, I love
Therapy 101.
yeah, dude, I know, right? Okay, welcome to Adventure Talk with Nick and Jerome. But, well, cool, man. Well, I appreciate it. I know we're
Yeah.
how many? Oh, yeah, we got like an hour and 20 on there. Nice, man. It goes by pretty fast.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I guess to wrap things up, maybe just a couple fun facts, I suppose, with the whole trip. So you had to get a car and the full rig and everything like that. Wait, I don't even know what I'm trying to ask. I think part of me wanted to ask, I'm probably going to edit this little chunk out, was how much it cost. But
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if we can really get into that.
I think it was like, I bought some of the stuff. I bought like the rack used. I got lucky. It was like, the rack came with all these like storage pods and stuff like that. It was like $1,500.
Yeah.
And then I had to buy some like, extra pieces to actually make that fit the truck. So I was probably close to like $2,000 there. The tent was like, it was like $4,000. I bought like the tent.
The tent,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like, and I mean, they're expensive as all get out anyways.
Mm-hmm.
You can certainly get, cheaper ones, but I kind of bought this one thinking that I would, it's big enough to grow into. Like if I wanted to do it with another person or have a dog, or like, if you ever have kids, like, if I hold on to it that long, like it's large enough to house that. Right. But,
Yeah.
And then I think I try to be pretty practical in the gear, but I mean, yeah, you're probably talking like $6,000-8,000,
For the gear part
for
of it.
just everything,
Outside of
all the gear,
outside
like,
of the vehicle.
yeah, outside the vehicle. But
That's pretty comparable to hiking the Appalachian Trail.
at the same time, I was thinking to myself, well, if I were to go out west for 5 weeks and stay in like hotels and Airbnbs and, buy dinners and stuff like that, I'm
it
probably
adds
going to
up
spend
fast.
that or more.
Easily.
And this is stuff that I'll invest in and I'll be able to reuse. So, I saw it
You're
as, like,
building equity again.
exactly. This is, it's some type of investment.
Well, pretty soon, though, you're going to have to make the leap from like that truck becomes your comfort zone.
Yeah.
That's when you go and do something like the AT.
Well, I've thought about
PCT.
that because I would say the hikes were like the most. That's what was some of the most incredible moments I had was
Yeah,
just
yeah.
the hiking,
Right.
and not only were they very challenging, but they're just there's something about obviously just being on foot and being in it. But yeah, so but at the same time, I was literally selling all my furniture, like anything, and then I was just taking that money and throwing it right into the rig.
Yard sale.
Yeah. So I didn't think I was like, I wasn't really concerned about that part.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, if you ever do get a hankering to do one of the great long distance trails,
long ones.
man, I would definitely be down to. I mean, when those trails, you get your solitude in for sure.
Yeah.
the AT obviously is the most popular, and you're going to see a lot of people, at least for the first half. The second half is just empty because most people
They
quit.
bail.
Yeah. But I've always been kind of hopeful that either the Pacific Crest Trail or the Continental Divide Trail are in my future. I got to get my back.
Yeah, you got to get back
to a
fixed.
point where
you can actually do something.
I'm good. Yeah, I think for me, health wise, at this point, once I get the back to where it was like this summer, it's gonna be a challenge to get back into like the fitness side of things and working out.
Yeah.
But I think the number one goal is gonna be, as soon as I can do like push ups and sit ups without straining my back, building that core back up is going to be
huge.
Priority number one. Because that, I can remember even on the AT, first 5 weeks, I had knee pain.
Oh, yeah.
But then my muscles in my legs became so strong after that it took the pain away.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So, I don't know. All right. Last question. It's the most annoying one. I get it all the time. So what's next?
Oh, God. Well, I mean, I've kind of already thought about that. I mean, I think the travel alone just made me want to continue to travel more, so to prioritize that. You're talking about, making sure you go on adventures and like living this life and stuff like that. And obviously priorities change as life changes, right?
Yeah.
But like, I think prioritizing adventure or yourself is like really important, and not like losing sight of that. So number one is just like going away from that. I'm like, I'm just going to travel more. When I have opportunities, I'm going to take them.
Yeah.
But I think what's next is at least for the rig, and doing something like that again, is come springtime next year, is getting basically back out west. I went to a lot of spots, but there was so much. Like when I was up in northwest Montana, I just was looking around being like, there are so many roads. There's so much space up here to go explore.
Open. Yeah.
And I'm really excited to like continue to do that, because I know that I'm going to keep being kind of blown away by, and it's just in our back door. You don't have to take a overseas flight or anything.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
You got to drive, but it's
hit
incredible.
that
So
road.
that's probably the next trip is maybe, I'd like to explore Montana some more.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, Glacier National Park, I'd like to get back up there. That place is like Jurassic Park.
I've never seen it. Yeah.
Oh my God.
I know. I've heard,
It's
man.
insane.
Yeah.
And I got to see it at sunset and sunrise. Oh man, I don't even know how to. I mean, New Zealand's great. It was awesome. But dude, there's some crazy sights there. So that's probably the next trip, is just getting back out west and just trying to hit some spots that I either didn't get a chance to get to. I mean, farther, I originally wanted to get all the way to the coast at one point, but I got lucky. In all the 5 weeks, the only day it rained was the first night in Michigan. I missed rain the entire trip.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which was great for
Yeah.
this type of like, dispersed camping. But when I went up to the North Cascades in Washington, I was planning on just saying, all right, screw it. Let's hit the coast, let's hit some of these national parks over here. But there was like 10 days of rain. So that's what pushed me back to Oregon.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I went down to like Leslie Gulch and stuff like that. But yeah, so there's a lot out there that I still want to explore. And so the idea would be to try and do another like several weeks out there.
Yeah. Nice, man. Well, hey, too, I'll always throw this out. Like, if I ever do take a trip down to the BVI or something like that, a little offshore passage.
Oh, yeah.
One of these days we gotta get you on a boat. Yeah.
Yeah.
And who knows? That's kind of one of the interesting changes, this year, is that I'm doing yacht deliveries again. And I don't know, they're fun little mini adventures, because it's a different boat.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's a small trip, relatively speaking, for me. But a lot of times it affords the option of like, oh, do you know anybody else that can go? Like, you're trying to get like 3 crew or something on the boat.
Yeah.
I'll hit you up, man.
Okay, cool.
Like, dude, hey.
I've never done something like that, so it'd be
You'd get a good feeling. I mean, it's a whole different can of worms when you're solo doing a trip.
Oh my God.
But
imagine.
that just going out and doing a crossing like to Bermuda or something like that, where you get 500 miles offshore. It's pretty cool. I'll bet you'd see the beauty in it without question. You'd be like, holy smokes! When you get a calm day or something like that, and you watch that sun go down or the sunrise, oof,
Gorgeous. Yeah.
Feel the isolation. All right, man. Thank you so much for sharing some time, and
Thank you.
good luck with any of the futures and the cold plunges and stuff. I'll let you know if I jump into Walloon while I'm up here. I might have to, man. I wonder if it might help my back.
It totally does.
Good for inflammation.
Yeah, you got to sit in it for a minute or two.
Yeah, I know.
You can't just dunk under and get out.
I know, right? No, for sure. But all right,
cool.
Thanks for sharing, man.
Yeah, thank you.